Hello, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about Victorian Valentine's traditions while I make a Victorian Valentine. So this is another installment of my Following Victorian Traditions for a Year series. You may have noticed that I slightly gave up on it for a while, partly because there's a lot of traditions in there, and also because a lot of them were either involving a lot of people, like you had to have like a party or a festival, which Corona doesn't really work, and or they were specifically for small children, which I am not and there are none of in the house. Fortunately, I didn't really miss anything huge, so here we are, returning with Valentine's Day. As per usual, I have my book of Mrs. Sharp's traditions, so I'll read to you some of the Victorian Valentine's practices while we do one of them. So one of our first Valentine's traditions in here is the Cupid's Tea, which is sort of what we're recreating today. The Cupid's Tea would usually be done the weekend before Valentine's Day, which it currently is. This is the time the Victorian people would get together to make Valentines for their friends and family. In the 1830s, around the time of the beginning of the Victorian era, a man named Joseph Addenbrooke is largely considered one of the biggest contributors to the evolution of the modern Valentine. While embossing some paper borders, Addenbrooke discovered that he could imitate lace with paper, hence the creation of the lace paper doily, which we often use for Valentine's-related crafts today. Collectors of Valentines consider the period between 1840 and 1860 to be the golden age of Valentines. This is because during this time the process of printing was greatly improved, so Valentines could be printed with a lot more depth and beauty, and they were just a lot more elaborate. So let's start working on a Victorian Valentine. I have a small piece of watercolor paper and a bunch of different acrylics that I can use, and some paintbrushes, glue, some ribbon, crafting, scrapbook paper, all kinds of things. So I think I'm going to use this scrapbook paper as my background. So Valentine's Day itself has been around for an incredibly long time, like hundreds of years, but actual Valentines weren't really technically considered to be created until about 1847. That's when a woman named Esther Howland was credited as being the mother of the American Valentine. Her father owned a company that made and distributed stationery. So basically she received a traditional English Valentine from a friend, and she thought it was incredibly beautiful. They didn't really have anything as elaborate and lovely in America at the time. And so she decided to sort of recreate this beauty and make some of her own Valentines. Then she convinced her father to let her sell them. She made several samples and then gave them to her brother, who was a sort of traveling salesman for her father's company. And then he came back with 5,000 orders. Like actually 5,000 orders for Valentines. So knowing that this was going to be a great success, Esther put together a shop. I believe it was sort of a part of the space in her father's shop, and she basically sold a whole lot of Valentines. They would be made incredibly elaborate with different pop-ups and also lots of different kinds of lace and all kinds of things. Now I actually have something cool to show you. I have what I believe are some actual Victorian Valentines. So I found these lovely things at the thrift store, which is absolutely crazy. At first I thought that the frames were made of plastic, but then when I was actually taking one out to actually get a good look at it, I realized that they're actually wood, but they've been painted over the years. So I have 4 of these, and at first I didn't actually know what they were, but I did have a suspicion that they were Victorian or Edwardian. But after doing a little research, I realized that I'm pretty sure that these are antique Valentines, which is super cool. I can see some sort of netting behind there and all kinds of different embossed lace cutout craziness, and there is no way that I can do this because I am not rich. But anyways, there's a look at some actual examples, at least if these are actually Valentines, which I'm pretty sure they are. So I have this sort of net material stuff. I'm going to put a piece of this that's basically this shape, only a little bit smaller, and glue that inside if I can. So one of the traditions that it says in Mrs. Sharp's book is a doll tea party. So apparently Valentine's Day was associated with a lot of things that I was not previously aware of. Part of the tradition was that it was the day that children would appreciate their toys, their dolls and stuffed animals, for playing with them all these years. Which, might I just say, is such an adorable concept. And likewise, the dolls and stuffed animals would thank the child for taking good care of them. And so one of the traditions was that the dolls and the stuffed animals would give some sort of little chocolate or treat to the child. So when the child would come home, they would see their dolls and stuffed animals sitting out holding a little chocolate in their paws or hands or whatever. And speaking of the children coming home from school, that was a tradition that I absolutely loved when I went to elementary school, and actually was also practiced in the Victorian era. The kids would give a Valentine to each of their classmates, and also some sort of Valentine thank you sort of thing for the teacher as well. Alright, so I have this Lacey piece here, and I have my card background, and I'm gonna try and use Mod Podge to like glue this down here. Oh, another thing about the Cupid's tea, which we're sort of recreating today in a way, is obviously, as the name would suggest, it had tea involved. After the Valentines were made and put into a decorated box that was sort of each person's Valentine mailbox, they would relax after their hard work with some tea and scones. I'm definitely concerned that this isn't going to stay very well, but I'll do everything I can. What do you guys do for Valentine's Day? I always like hearing different people's traditions because I feel like everyone does it quite differently. For Valentine's Day, we have meatloaf for dinner. This is not really for any particular reason, but just because we did it one year and then it kind of was just like, well, that was good. We should do it every year. Okay, I've glued this down. All right, I have this ribbon that I got from the thrift store because obviously I get everything from the thrift store. I'm going to glue this as a border around that Lacey stuff that I glued down. This definitely does not want to glue down, but I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna find a way. I'm just holding down this ribbon forever and ever until it dries. I mean, I would just like get my hot glue gun, but that feels like cheating. Here's what I have currently. All right, I'm going to cut out a little rectangle of cardstock so that I can glue it on to the bottom here for a place to write your little message, your will you be my Valentine and such. So one of the traditions in the book of Mrs. Sharp's traditions, which is involved in Valentine's Day, is Valentine's breakfast. And it specifically mentions strawberry muffins, which sound so delicious. But also, I don't really know how historical all of the things in there are because some of the things are like modern ways that you can emulate the Victorian Valentine's Day. And because Valentine's Day is in February, I feel like it's a little inaccessible to use strawberries. I mean, I guess unless you used strawberry jam, like strawberry preserves from summer. All right, I'm gonna draw a little pattern around the edge of this. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is take some of this watercolor paper and paint a bluebird. So birds are actually directly connected to our subject of Valentine's because there is yet another aspect to the Victorian Valentine's Day. It was believed that Valentine's Day was the day that birds would decide on their mates and get married to them, which is like the cutest thing I've ever heard. So one of the traditions mentioned in Mrs. Sharp's book is that there would be some sort of bird seed treat made to be hung from the trees for the birds to enjoy their romantic day. Alright, now I have my little Valentine's birdie and I'm going to cut him out. I think I'd like him to sort of stand out a little bit, so I'm going to cut out a few squares of the cardstock and glue that behind him. Okay, I need to hold that for approximately 1,000,000 years so that it can stay. Okay, I think this might stay or not. Cool, yeah, that's awesome. I do really wish that I had some kind of fancy lace. Should have just like gone to the dollar store and gotten some of those lace doilies, but didn't have time for that. Alright, that is still going to need some considerable time to dry, but in the meantime, I'm going to glue some of these fake flowers on there. I have a feeling that that's not really gonna work without a glue gun. I mean, I'll try it and see. Yeah, that's definitely not going to work. I do have some real dried flowers here though, and I think I can incorporate those. So there is one last Victorian Valentine's tradition. At the end of the day, the family comes together for dinner and the children ask the parents about their courtship / when they were dating, when they first met, all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, and about those super fancy Valentines made by Esther Howland, apparently she had to package them in boxes because they were so elaborate and delicate, which definitely makes sense because mine is like not even that elaborate and it already feels like this could benefit from being packed into a box if I were to send it anywhere. So after I finish holding my finger to these flowers so that the glue can dry, I'll give you a good look at the finished Valentine.
Daintiest thing, it was sweet Alice blue, with little forget-me-nots they
So I've definitely created a rather large mess here, but the Valentine I think is very, very cute. It's definitely not as fancy and elaborate as these, like, actual Victorian Valentines, but it was still very fun to make and I think it's very cute. If you guys decide to have your own sort of Cupid's tea and make your own homemade Valentines, please send me pictures. I'd love to see them. You can DM me on Instagram. I especially think that this is a very fun activity to do with kids, even if they can't make them super fancy or anything, it's still a very fun activity. And what do you think of these Victorian Valentine's Day traditions? Do you still practice any of these by chance? What do you do for Valentine's Day? That would be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment, rate, subscribe, and all that jazz, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Her father owned a company that made and Yeah. Oh my gosh. Cupid's tea and make your own. Oh my gosh, why can't I English?